morning. It is Monday and it's day 24 on the court. I wanted to explain a phenomenal type of science that occurs with basketball. It's called the backspin. It has everything to do with the Magnus effect, and the Magnus effect was explained and named after a man named Heinrich Magnus in 1852. Backspin is science. The physics of this whole concept is that by putting a backspin on your ball, it deadens the ball when it bounces off the rim or the backboard, and it gives the ball a better chance of settling through the net. So I'm going to show a couple of tips on how to get a good backspin and how to make the backspin as productive as possible. First, I want to show what it looks like if you try to make a shot without putting any spin on it, which is kind of hard to do if you're but you just have to shoot it straight and push the ball rather than cause it to spin. Now I'm going to show what happens when you put the spin on the ball. And one thing I noticed, whereas when I threw the ball without any spin, it just hit bluntly the backboard and it's going to bounce off and go in any different direction, versus when you put the spin, it's going to help it when it bounces off of the backboard, off that little square, and help it to rotate into the basket. And so knowing how to do a good spin, some of my shots were not following some of the principles, and the first principle is to be able to throw it straight. So if I have my arm out like this and I throw with my shoulder just slightly to the left or slightly to the right, then I'm not going to get a straight shot, obviously, to the basket. So I have to try and practice. And I think that a good way to practice all these little skills that I'm going to explain is to practice them against a wall until you can get the muscle memory to throw it straight and to do the different things that I'm going to explain. So the first thing is to practice throwing with a straight arm in the direction that you want it to go. The next thing is to find the seam. If you can rotate the ball with the seams going this way and each end on the sides, this is the best spinning direction. So if it can spin like this, this is the best way for it to spin, the best balance of the ball. So what you want to do is find the seam, and this is the first thing, is find the seam, and the second thing is to use your shooting finger and to really focus on that shooting finger. It's like the arm in the direction. If you are shooting off of 4 fingers, one finger's going to become dominant. You want to figure out which is your dominant finger. Is it your middle finger, your first finger? Some people actually do 2 fingers, but between all 4 fingers, you want to practice shooting with the dominant finger helping to push the ball in the direction you want it to go. You want this finger to grip the seam. So if you receive the ball or you catch a pass, you could roll it around until you get it to this direction and place your hand onto the seam and your dominant finger grip it right in one of those seams. So one of these seams right here, and then you'll be able to snap your wrist and push it off of that seam. I'll show you what it's like to shoot and not put my finger into the seam. Now I'm going to shoot with my finger, my dominant finger, and I'm going with my middle finger, and we'll see what happens if I grip the seam with that middle finger. One thing I found that as I was practicing that, it does make a difference in how you can direct that ball. It feels like I have more control, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to be throwing that ball perfect. I have to tighten up all the other technical skills that I have as well, but it's such a powerful skill to have, to be able to place my dominant finger on to the center of this ball, center of gravity on the seam, so that I can grip it better and get a better shot. The next important thing to remember is hand placement. I never thought about this before, but I would used to just take the ball and just shoot it however it was sitting in my hand, not worry about the seams. But one thing you need to think about is placing your hand on the seam straight, because that's going to allow the ball to spin with its center of gravity right here. It's going to spin the best and have it spin in the center. If you turn your hand to the side, so that instead of having your hand directly like this on the seams with your dominant finger in the seam, if you turn your hand this way, it's going to cause the ball to spin different than having that center of gravity where you want it, with the seams like this and these two ends on the side. So instead of grabbing the ball any which way, make sure that you have gripped the ball so that your hand is straight rather than crooked. So I'm going to shoot the ball with my hand just any which way on the seam, but this way, in a crooked way. Let's see what happens. Now I'm going to do it with my hand straight on the seams and my dominant finger on the seam, but like I said, it will be straight rather than crooked on the ball. One thing I found, it definitely is exciting to know that I can have more control of the ball. It's not just a random how it's going to fall if I lob it towards the basket, but it just feels like there's so much more control with it. Now with hand placement and seams in the correct position, it's time to talk about the next skill, which is to lock your wrist early. And when you lock your wrist, instead of it just being flat, you put it in position for shooting. And some of the tutorials say that if you lock your wrist early, instead of waiting till you're shooting, you're up here and then you lock it, it already puts the ball into the position it needs to, so that you can flick your wrist and allow it to have a good spin. And so with this, it allows the last thing, which causes your hand to be in the locking position, and when you shoot the ball, your hand flicks underneath the ball and causes it to backspin. So as you lock your wrist and you go to shoot it, your fingers push the ball in this direction, creating the Magnus effect and allowing the ball to go in the direction where you want it to go. And so we'll try that, locking early and then flicking the wrist. Lock early. I need to give it a little more punch. When I put it, that amazes me, because when I put all those skills together, all those elements together, it's amazing to me how you can control the ball better as you make your shots by doing all those principles, which is finding the seams, placing your dominant finger on the seam, locking your wrist early, and then allowing your wrist to flick quickly, keeping your arm straight towards the ball, using your dominant finger in the seam to point and direct the ball where you want it to go. The quick flick is causing the Magnus effect and causing it to backspin. And that really does make a big difference. So that's the way I'm going to be practicing my shots from now on. So I hope this helps you. I hope this can help improve your game. And I will see you tomorrow.